shit.
Welcome back to the Mantry podcast. I am your host, Reggie Milligan, co-founder here at Mantry. This podcast is all about helping you cook better. We do it audio format so you can throw it on the go while you're cleaning, while you're commuting, so the next time you get back in the kitchen, you're just a little bit more ready to go. This episode, we are talking sandwiches. 6 tips for the best sandwich of your life. A lot of people make sandwiches. A lot of people make sandwiches every week. Here's a couple tips we thought we could offer up that's going to take your sandwich making game to the next level. As with everything with cooking, a little bit of knowledge going into it is going to allow you to just have a couple corners to cut, a couple tips that produce a way better product. So first things first, number 1, start with bread delicious enough to eat plain. So much like the standby advice of only cook with wine you would drink, a good marker for bread to use is, would you eat this stuff straight up with nothing on it? I'm not talking any butter. I'm not talking any jam. I'm just talking, would you cut off a piece of that bread and eat it straight up? People forget that over 50% of the flavor of a sandwich and enjoyment of a sandwich will come from the bread that you use. And so make sure it's fresh. Make sure, obviously, it's not stale, first things first. Make sure that if you go to a local bakery and you get a good ciabatta, a baguette is also is always a reliable bread, sourdough. But generally speaking, you want just something that was fresh made that day and that has a little bit of texture to it. And by that, I mean it's not too thin. You know, when you think about like your standard piece of boring old supermarket bread, it's quite thin. There's not a lot to it. It doesn't bring a lot of integrity to the sandwich. So just go to a local bakery, get to know your local bakery, say, I'm going to make an awesome sandwich. What do you recommend? Number 2, layer like a burger. So this is a very simple philosophy. A lot of people don't think about the layering that goes into a sandwich. But if you think about building the sandwich the way you would build a burger, you'd be on the right path. You know, think about it as like, as you bite through, the toppings set the stage to as you go towards the main event, which would be like the patty. So first you kind of have layers of crispness, and then maybe the creaminess with the cheese, and then you have that unctuous final protein layer. So, you know, if you were to take a fried chicken sandwich, for example, maybe you want to start with like some really crisp radishes or pickles, and then you want to move through to like a real nice like piece of Havarti, and then you get that fried chicken layer in the bottom. You know, or if you want to go with something like a roast beef sandwich, you want to have your crisp red onions and you want to have your sprouts, and then you move on to that layer of maybe you have like a goat cheese spread layer, and then you have your meat at the bottom. A lot of people actually mess this up by like throwing toppings down and then meat and not thinking about how you're actually going to bite through the sandwich as you go. So if you focus on just layering it like a burger patty on the bottom, you can't really screw it up. Number 3, focus on the spread. We love this underrated tip from Roy Choi. We've mentioned it before. Quote, to make a great sandwich, spread the mayonnaise from one corner to the other corner of the bread. People rush this step and just do a whoosh down the middle. Swoosh down the middle. Every bite should be flavorful. Now that's a sandwich. So Roy has a great tip here. And you want the spread that you're using, whether that's a little bit of butter, whether that's mayo, or whether you're getting into something like guacamole, it's meant to moisten the bread. It's meant to make sure that each bite of the sandwich is moist for the most part. So you want to make sure that that whole bottom layer is covered. And just you don't want to do the old like S swipe on it. Just make sure corner to corner you've got it covered. Number 4, friction is your friend. So if you ever bite into a sandwich and it immediately falls apart, like it kind of goes zeds out on you and tomatoes go at one end and the bread goes out the other, things are just too slippery. Excuse me. And the ingredients like tomatoes, cucumbers, they shouldn't be stacked on top of each other. It's better to have something to alternate with that's a rougher ingredient, like lettuce, you think of arugula or something, sliced onions, that type of thing. So like if you're going to put 2 layers of tomatoes, you kind of want to go onion or tomato, arugula, tomato, or tomato, lettuce, cucumber. And that's going to actually lock everything in so that you're not having ingredients scoot out the side. Like if you just think about adding even a grilled cheese with tomato, if you can add in like a little layer of something rough, like a little basil or something in there, or spread, it'll kind of help it'll help combine the tomato to the cheese layer. So friction is your friend. Stagger rougher ingredients between more slippery ones. Number 5, sweeten things up. Here's an awesome tip from Tyler Cord of Number 7 Sub, which is a great shop here in New York. Quote, when you're working with roast pork or short rib or other savory things, that little balance of sweetness is what makes a dope sandwich. And what Tyler is basically saying here is, I mean, when you have richness in your main protein or main ingredient, even if it's like a roasted portobello mushroom, a little bit of sweetness will offset that. And it especially works for spiciness. A little bit of sweetness will really offset spiciness. So, a little bit of jam or honey can really take things to the next level. Marmalade on a roast beef sandwich is really great. It kind of adds this other dimension to the sandwich. It becomes this, with everything on this list, it becomes this sort of combination of things. You have a little bit of crispness, and then you have it's layered properly, and then you've got something sweet, and you've got your meat on the bottom, and like a sandwich is meant to be this like whole play of textures and flavors and spicy salts, and so it's meant to kind of have a bunch of those under one roof, being the bread. Number 6, the final tip, crucial, season between layers. So too many people basically just kind of do this half-assed little sprinkle of salt maybe at the end on the top of their sandwich. And I mean, the worst thing you do is just not season the sandwich completely, but make sure that you're seasoning between layers. Like if you layer down some tomatoes, make sure you season with tomato with salt and pepper. Cucumbers, a little bit of salt and pepper. Like if you're going to lay down that roasted portobello mushroom or that roast chicken or whatever in your sandwich, make sure you're seasoning that layer before you go. Same thing with your spread. Like if you lay down a little bit of mayo, a little bit of salt and pepper goes a long way. You can also use things like curry powder. You can use paprika, all sorts of levels. But one thing I do like to do is just before you make the sandwich, like lay out all the ingredients you're going to use, and anything that you would normally season, like tomatoes, like meat, like cucumbers, to go into, like for example, a normal plated dish, just season those beforehand, and then when you assemble the sandwich, your components are already pre-seasoned. So that's the 6 tips, just to quickly review. 1, start with bread delicious enough to eat plain. 2, layer like a burger. Make sure you keep that protein on the bottom and then build the toppings on top of that. Number 3, focus on the spread, corner to corner on any spread that goes on the bread. 4, friction is your friend. Stagger lettuce and tomato so you separate sort of textured elements and slippery. Number 5, sweeten things up. So don't overlook a little bit of jam, a little bit of honey, marmalade. Goes a long way for adding a cool layer of dimension to the sandwich. And 6, season between layers. Make sure you're seasoning the sandwich and make sure that you're layering the elements that go into it. So that's it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you share it. Hit that like button. Tweet it out. Do what you got to do. We would appreciate you spreading the word. We'll be back again with more tips. I'm Reggie, co-founder at Mantry. You can also check our subscription online. Mantry is a food subscription that is tailored to guys. And it is at Mantry, MANTRY.com. So So thank you for listening and good luck cooking.